good evening, or good morning actually. Good morning. Welcome to the Kingsport News Hour for the, let's see, we're now in the 10th day. Yes, 10th day of the first month, the 17th year of Cheongi. Tim Elder sitting in for the second king of Cheongguk, Kyung Ji-moon. And I'm sort of glancing around here because I'm doing everything myself again. Whoop, I just clicked. Okay. Slight interruption there, I guess. Yeah, I clicked the wrong place right there. I'm doing everything myself, so things are a little bit topsy-turvy or sort of, anyway, yes, no tech team. So let's see, let's start with our trip around the kingdom right now. It's raining in Chungkyong, Tennessee, and the rain will continue for at least 60 minutes. Right now, breezy with periods of rain. Beneficial rain can lead to ponding on roadways. Yeah, I hope you knew that. High of 58 degrees today, right now 47. Tonight, breezy this evening, otherwise clouds breaking, low of 38. Father's hometown, meanwhile, in Jeongju, North Pyongan Province, Korea, 36 degrees, partly cloudy, and continued partly cloudy through the night at 27 degrees for a low. Tomorrow, sun and some clouds, high of 52. The Cheongguk Palace in northeast Pennsylvania, currently 26 and sunny. And today, some sun, then turning cloudy, high of 42. Tonight, partly cloudy, low of 17. Oh, cold tonight, or chilly. And at the Liberty Rock RV Park and Campground in Limestone County, Texas, 58 degrees and partly cloudy. Windy and very warm with plenty of sunshine, high of 81 today. Tonight, clear, low of 55. And then at the Suncheon Palace in Korea, 52 degrees, currently cloudy. And then tonight, continued cloudiness, occasional rain late, low of 44. Tomorrow, little morning rain, otherwise overcast, high of 58. Gunma Palace is in Japan, 53 degrees right now, with cloudy skies, and those clouds will increase through the night, low of 44. Tomorrow, cloudy and warm, high of 67. Guangzhou, Guangdong, China, 76 right now, and overcast, cloudy, warm, and humid, occasional late night rain, and a thunderstorm tonight, low of 68. Tomorrow, cloudy and humid with occasional rain, thunderstorm, high of 77. All right, let's go to Father's Word. Let's see, here we go, here. And we're in the book on the Pan-Pacific Providence. There we go, okay. All right, let's see, chapter 4. Oceanic culture, oceanic civilizations as seen from God's providence. Chapter 4, and I don't know what section we're in here. It's a long section. Okay. All right, so, and here in this paragraph, Father's talking about the change of lineage and the change of ownership, right of ownership. You must do the change of lineage and the change of right of ownership. So, and he's talking about Japan here. Japan has inherited the right of ownership of Satan, and before Satan is the owner, Adam should have been the owner, and before Adam is the owner, God must be the owner. But God currently is not the owner, and Adam is not the owner. The right of ownership, which Eve lost, must be recovered, and so we must go out into the world, go out into the globe. In other words, not just the secular world, but the world as a whole, in order to deal with this. And the right of ownership must be returned to God. And in order to do that, 직접 선생님한테로 가져올 수 없습니다. You cannot bring things, you cannot bring property directly to Father. You must do it through Father's sons and daughters, and must go through Mother. Must go through the opposite course. It is the same as other forms of restoration. You must go through the sons and daughters. So right now, Father, of course, this was I didn't check the date, but it was a long time ago, not recently. Okay. So must go through the second king of Cheongguk, yes, and of course, In terms of mother, we have a mother in the spirit world, but I think still the pattern holds the same. The pattern is the same. So this is why when we do the holy days, or when we do the blessings, and the king is dressed in his formal sort of religious garb, and we have sort of assistants who hand things to the king. But never, ever, ever, the fundamental rule is that nothing ever gets passed to the king directly. Everything gets passed to the queen, and then the queen gives it to the king. This is a cardinal rule in these ceremonies, and I think that was reflected in what the Father just taught us there right now. All right, let's see what's going on in the world. And so yesterday we had the OSTP, and so we did not cover the State of the Union. And, as I've indicated, these speeches by politicians, I'm not a big fan of these speeches. And one news outlet, not an American one or a European one, it's actually an Asian outlet, actually an Indian outlet, said that this was more of a political rally than it was a kind of a speech. And I think, although I did not watch it, but looking at the news and looking at the various sort of clips that have come out, it's clear that that was the case, that this was in large part a political rally. President Trump's public opinion support has been down. And, of course, for about a few days before the speech, it was recovering. It was down to about, on the Rasmussen poll, his support was down to about, 41, something like that, I think. What was the lowest here? Anyway, right now it has recovered to 46. It was at 47, but low here it was 41 for a couple of days, about 3 weeks ago, close to 3 weeks ago. That was when it hit the low. But yeah, right now, going into the midterm elections now, and the primaries, of course, have already begun, and so getting really serious time, political time. It's not surprising that this speech was very sort of more like a political campaign speech than anything else. I guess he did announce some important policies, but it was pretty much a campaign thing. And he sort of did a gotcha there, where he said, "Okay, well, stand up if you think that the government should prioritize American citizens over illegal immigrants." And of course, the Democrats did not stand, and that was kind of a gotcha thing. But this is, I mean, when they go into these speeches, that one side is always going to be standing up and clapping on every comma and every period, and the other side is just going to be glued to their seats. And of course, he knew that going in, and that's why he put that line in there to sort of catch the Democrats in. So it was kind of a theatrical thing, I guess you could say. But the fact is that politics, in many ways, is part theater. That is a fundamental rule of politics. At least in the way that it is done right now in the United States. And it's been that way for a long time, at least since the Kennedy-Nixon debates of 1960. It has certainly been part Hollywood. Yes. Excuse me, just a minute for the coffee. So anyway, and the Republicans are all excited about it. The Democrats are saying, "Oh, it was a terrible speech," and but I'll tell you, 50 years from now, no one will remember it. No one will remember President Trump's State of the Union speech of 2026 when they're looking back 50 years from now. So it's not that big of a deal in the sort of a larger scheme of things. So, in this King's Report, I try to focus on things that will be talked about 50 years from now. In other words, the trends that show where we are going and what we are fighting against, and so forth and so on. So in that sense, right now, we see that Germany's Chancellor Merz, Chancellor, of course, is sort of the German equivalent of a prime minister, is in Beijing, and we knew this was coming. It seems to be coming a little bit earlier than I thought. I thought it was going to be more like March or April. But he's in Beijing right now, and he's actually ending his visit to China today, and says here that he ended his 2-day visit to China on Thursday in the tech hub of Hangzhou, identifying challenges that we must overcome together after meeting President Xi Jinping and announcing an Airbus deal. Merz's official visit to China came as Berlin and Beijing seek to build on decades-old economic ties to weather global uncertainty sparked by U.S. President Donald Trump's tariff blitz and erratic foreign policies. Well, this is an AFP report. It's a French wire service, so of course they're a little bit critical of President Trump. They have to be. And Merz is the most recent in a sort of a string of foreign leaders, European and South Korean leaders that have been marching to Beijing to pay homage, I guess you can say, to Emperor Xi Jinping, hoping for his blessing. And I'm sure Xi Jinping is having a great old time because this sort of gives him, credibility with his elite, the Communist Party elite, the sort of the elders of the Communist Party, the former president and sort of the top leaders of the Communist Party. And it helps to solidify his political foundation within the Communist Party. So this is what they're doing, and so they are choosing Beijing over America, over President Trump, which is not, in the long run, it's not going to be good for them. Here I see that, well, before we get to that, let's go ahead and do the State of the Union. Epoch Times has a story called 8 Takeaways from Trump's State of the Union Address. I'm not going to try and share this because, when I'm doing the broadcast myself, my computer is not able to handle that much traffic. And the last time I tried it just got a blank screen. So I'm just going to read this to you. But anyway, you can go to the epochtimes.com if you like and look it up yourself. The president unveiled new policies, including a retirement program proposal, lower energy costs tied to data centers, and a task force to combat fraud. Combat fraud. Okay, well, about time. Well, I've talked about the best way to combat fraud is to distribute power, because the only reason there's fraud is because there's power concentrated someplace, and so people will give bribes to that place where the power is concentrated in order to get something. Anyway, President Donald Trump highlighted his economic agenda in a record-long State of the Union address on February 24th, declaring that the United States is bigger, richer, stronger than ever before. Is that true? Bigger, richer, stronger than ever before? Stronger, I don't think so. I mean, stronger is always a relative term, right? So obviously the United States was stronger relative to other nations around the world. It was stronger after World War II, when the United States was the only one with atomic weapons and nuclear weapons. And between that, and I'm not sure right off the hand when Soviet Union got nuclear weapons, but in that window, the United States was basically the supreme power of the world. And today, thanks to the dollar, the United States certainly is strong, but stronger than ever before, I think that's probably a bit of a exaggeration. Bigger. Bigger? How are we bigger? economy, I suppose the size of the GNP, the gross national product, gross domestic product, I suppose is bigger. Richer. That also is a relative term, isn't it? Anyway, okay, well, it's, like I said, it's political theater. All right, so let's not get too far into the weeds there. In his speech, which was 1 hour and 47 minutes long, the president introduced multiple guests to spotlight the impacts of his policy, from the no tax on tips provision to Trump accounts. The president awarded the Medal of Honor to a Korean War hero and to a helicopter pilot wounded in the mission to capture Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro, and he announced that he would award the Medal of Freedom to U.S. men's national hockey team goalie Connor Hellebuyck. Here are 8 takeaways from the president's speech. New retirement program proposal. All right. Trump's speech focused in part on bettering Americans' financial situation through new policies on retirement accounts and home ownership. Next year, my administration will give these often forgotten American workers, great people, the people that built our country, access to the same type of retirement plan offered to every federal worker, Trump said. His policy will provide 401k plans with up to $1,000 per year in matching contributions for workers whose employers do not provide them with plans. Estimates suggest that about 56 million workers currently have no employer-sponsored retirement plans. Okay, well, that's good. The president also touted lower housing costs during his administration. Mortgage rates are the lowest in 4 years and falling fast, he said. The average 30-year fixed-rate mortgage is about 6%, down from 7% when Trump took office. Trump also championed his recent executive order clamping down on large institutional investors buying single-family homes. He urged Congress to make his ban permanent. We want homes for people, not for corporations, he said. And that's interesting, but anytime the government enters the market, it is always distorting the market. And I agree that it would be better if corporations were not buying up homes, because what they do is, of course, they rent them out, and so they're creating a lot of renters rather than homeowners. And that is not a good trend, but I'm sure there is a way. If we were to sit down and think about it, there would be a way that we could solve this through through free market principles, not having the government being involved in just saying, okay, we're not going to let corporations buy homes. That might work in the short term, but always when government intervenes, they distort the market, and that causes problems later on down the line. Anyway. So he pointed to guest Rachel Wiggins, a mother of 2 who has lost out on 20 bids on homes to large investment firms. They are stealing away our American dream, he said. 20 bids? I think if you lose out on 20 bids, there may be something wrong with your strategy. Yeah. My wife and I had an experience of trying to buy a home, and we did finally buy a home, but this was back in, 2001, right? Yeah, 2001, when the housing bubble was forming, and it was definitely a seller's market, and we lost out on 2 bids. We lost out on 2 bids, even though we were offering more than the asking price. And so the third time we went in and we just gave them a ridiculous price, or so we thought at the time, and we got the house. But then 10 years later, we sold the house for about a 75% profit. Yeah, 75% profit 10 years later, because the housing bubble situation there. So 20 bids? I think there's a problem with your bidding strategy, frankly, ma'am. Anyway, okay, so data center energy deal with big tech. Trump unveiled a deal with big tech firms that will have them shoulder more of the electricity costs generated as a result of data centers used for artificial intelligence equipment. Okay, again, government intervening in the market activity, which I think always brings problems. I know there are always good intentions, but road to hell is paved with good intentions. I once tried to find out who actually said that, and I came up empty. I haven't been able to find it. But that's been said by many people, that's for sure. But I don't know who originally said it. The road to hell is paved with good intentions, and this may be one of those cases again. More of the electricity costs generated as a result of data centers used for artificial intelligence development. We're telling the major tech companies that they have the obligation to provide for their own power needs, he said, describing it as a ratepayer protection pledge. They can build their own power plants as part of their factory so that no one's prices will go up, and in many cases prices of electricity will go down for the community, and very substantially down. Since returning to office in January 2025, Trump has promoted the co-location of new energy sources and data centers to accelerate the build-out of artificial intelligence infrastructure with initiatives that fast-track permits, reduce regulatory hurdles, and make federal land available for these projects. The president said this unique strategy, never used in this country before, will ensure the company's ability to get electricity while at the same time lowering prices of electricity for Americans. Well, this may be something that companies would be doing anyway, because they will, of course, want access to low energy costs. So they will be building their factories in areas where they can get low energy costs. Right? All right, so, and then medal highlights. Throughout his address, Trump took the opportunity to bestow official recognition on Americans, connecting stories of heroism and accomplishment for the first year of his second presidential term. He first announced that he would present the Presidential Medal of Freedom to Hollywood following the U.S. men's national hockey team's Olympic gold medal game on February 22nd. The Presidential Medal of Freedom is considered tied with the Congressional Gold Medal as the highest official U.S. award for civilians. The president next awarded the Legion of Merit to U.S. Coast Guard rescue swimmer Scott Ruskin, who helped rescue 165 people during flash flooding in Texas in the summer of 2025. Trump highlighted the January 3rd U.S. Special Operations raid to capture Maduro. He tied much of its success to Army Chief Warrant Officer 5 Eric Slover, who continued to fly one of the helicopters in the strike force despite being hit by enemy fire. Trump awarded Slover the Medal of Honor, the first time in history that the highest military decoration for valor has been awarded during a State of the Union address. Moments later, Trump awarded the second Medal of Honor to retired Navy pilot E. Royce Williams for downing 4 Soviet fighter jets in a 1952 aerial battle during the Korean War. Democrats withhold applause. At one point, Trump called on audience members to stand up and show their support if they agreed with the notion that the first duty of an American government is to protect American citizens, not illegal aliens. When many Democrats remained seated, Trump said to them that they should be ashamed. At another point, well, they probably had super glue on their on their seats. At another point in the president's speech, Representative Ilhan Omar appeared to yell that Trump should be ashamed. The president also expressed frustration with Democrats' refusal to stand for Sage Blair, whose relatives had accused Virginia school officials of going behind her family's back to help Blair transition when she was 14. He also called out Democrats for not standing when he introduced the mother of Irina Zarutska, the Ukrainian refugee who was brutally murdered in Charlotte, North Carolina, by a repeat offender who was free on no cash bail. However, Democrats did stand and applaud when Trump said they all voted against his large tax cut and spending bill last year. The party had criticized the legislation, saying that it disproportionately benefited the wealthy and funded tax breaks through significant Medicaid cuts. The president's remarks came as Democrats challenged Trump on affordability, saying that his administration has seen rising costs for things such as health care. To showcase his economic achievements, the president gave shout-outs to several Americans who have benefited from policies in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act enacted last year. Pennsylvania mother of 2, Megan Hemshauser, a bartender who homeschools her children, had her tax bill more than cut in half under Trump's economic policies, he said. Okay. Megan is here this evening, and she's happy to tell you that she is so much richer because with no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, and her expanded child tax credit, Meghan and her husband will take home more than $5,000 extra just for the year, Trump said. Parents such as Hemhauser can activate their children's new Trump accounts, the president said, funded courtesy of the Treasury Department and private individuals such as Michael and Susan Dell. The Dells, who have donated $6.25 billion to fund Trump accounts for 25 million children, were also guests at the State of the Union address. And he strikes softer tariff tone, teases income tax replacement. Trump adopted a more measured approach when defending his tariff agenda to rebalance international trade. The president had previously sharply criticized the Supreme Court for overturning its emergency tariffs. During the address, at which 4 of the justices were in attendance, 4 out of the 9. So yes, I think we could. No, we know who 3 of those were. He struck a softer tone, calling the decision very unfortunate. Despite the High Court's ruling, countries that have established trade agreements with the United States will continue to work along the same successful path that was negotiated before the Supreme Court's unfortunate involvement, Trump said. Trump invoked Section 122 and 301 of the Trade Act of 1974, implementing a new global tariff rate of 10%, although he said on social media that he would raise the rate to 15%, the higher number was not yet listed in executive proclamations. He also teased that tariffs will one day replace the income tax. Tariffs paid for by foreign countries will, like in the past, substantially replace the modern-day system of income tax, Trump said. Interesting concept. Of course, this is how the U.S. Government was funded, in the 18th and 19th centuries. It is kind of a tax on consumption, isn't it? And in the Chinese Constitution, income tax is outlawed, but sales tax is allowed. And this, of course, sales tax is always going to be paid for by the consumer, whereas a tariff, the consumer pays a large portion, but also, depending on market dynamics, some part of the tariffs gets absorbed by either the exporter, the importer, or the wholesaler along the way. So it's hard to know what is better. Although I suppose, I'm sure that the new Constitution would not have a problem with the tariffs if Congress wanted to approve them in the future. We'll have to see here. There are the 4 that came. So, this is John Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett, Brett Kavanaugh, and who is this? I don't know. Is that Kagan? Okay. Among his new policy promises on the night of February 24, Trump said he was officially announcing the war on fraud. You see, this is this is bad. Again, good intentions, paving the way to hell. And of course, this would be against the Chinese Constitution because the Chinese Constitution outlaws wars on non-state actors, and fraud is a non-state actor. So you cannot have wars. You cannot have a war on drugs, poverty, obesity, crime. What else? All these things now. Now we have a new war on fraud. And why is this bad? Well, because whenever you use the word war, it means that you're concentrating power. All right? It's war. You have to sacrifice. We have to concentrate power in order to fight this war. And that's why politicians use the word war, because it helps them concentrate power in themselves. That's a very unfortunate phrase that he used, announcing the war on fraud. And I can tell you right now who's going to win. Fraud. Fraud is going to win. Who won the war on poverty? Poverty won. Who won the war on crime? Crime won. The war on drugs? Drugs won. Obesity. Who won the war on obesity? Obesity won. So I can tell you right now that fraud is going to win this war. My goodness, yes, this is bad. And I guess when you're sitting in Washington, you don't see these things, that really none of these wars turn out very well. None of them are effective in actually solving the problem that they're supposed to solve. And but as I pointed out, if you want to fight fraud, okay, you have to take power away from people so that the power is so disseminated, so distributed, that it's not worth the bribe to give to someone. If you want to, or if you want to, or in the case of Minnesota, where all this basically what amounts to welfare was being misspent. Get the government out of welfare, right? Get the government out of welfare and put it into the private sector, where private nonprofit organizations are going to be using donations, and then they'll be accountable to their donors to make sure that the money gets spent in the correct way, in the way that the donors expect. If it doesn't, then the donors will go someplace else. And so there's competition among non-government organizations, among charity organizations, private charity organizations. So you want to fight a war on fraud? Get the government out of welfare entirely. Of course, as the first step, the government can take the money that it's currently giving to these organizations and give it to a larger number, a wider spectrum of organizations, and then sort of monitor and see who is spending the money most effectively, and then focus on those. Yeah. The vice president responded saying, "I'll get it done." Well, let's come back in a year, 2, 3, and see how he's done. But, the president said that fraud was rife across multiple states and that a task force was required to eliminate it. Oh no, he's going to create a task force. You see that? You see where this is going? And guess what? The members of those task force, they're going to get paid. They're going to get paid. Oh my goodness. How? Oh no. Task force. And again, task force is it's a wartime. It's a term that comes from war. When it comes to the corruption that is plundering, really it is plundering America, there's been no more stunning example than Minnesota, Trump said. He also pointed to California, Massachusetts, and Maine, and said that many other states are even worse. Trump's announcement followed a fraud investigation late last year into welfare programs. Welfare programs, you see that? In multiple states. For Minnesota, the Justice Department has said half or more of the $18 billion billed throughout 14 Medicaid services. Okay, so get the American government out of health services. Okay, get it out of Medicaid, Medicare, Medicaid, get it out, and increase competition in the healthcare industry to bring down prices. That state since 2018 could be fraudulent. An official from the Office of Minnesota Governor Tom Waltz said in December that the Waltz administration had evidence of tens of millions of dollars in fraud to this point, but not billions of dollars. Waltz, a Democrat, accused Trump administration of using its estimates without the proof behind it. The fraud allegations in Minnesota have so far resulted in 64 individuals convicted out of 98 charged. Well, that was fast. Okay. All right, so the war on fraud. My goodness. All right, Trump backs bill banning congressional stock trading. Now, this is kind of a common sense thing that should have been done a long time ago. Trump urged Congress to approve legislation barring lawmakers from trading individual stocks. In making the case for Stop Insider Trading Act, Trump pointed to former Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi, whose husband's investment activity has drawn scrutiny and allegations of trading based on insider information. And yeah, because Congress often exempts itself or its members from laws that it passes. For example, labor laws. And for example, insider trading laws. It exempts members of Congress. Efforts to restrict congressional stock trading have circulated on Capitol Hill for years. if not decades. Right? But lawmakers have yet to reach a final agreement. One sticking point has been whether the ban should also apply to the president. The White House has pushed back on proposals from Democrats and Senator Josh Hawley that would extend the prohibition to the Oval Office. The House Committee on House Administration advanced the bill last month. House Speaker Mike Johnson supports the legislation which would ban members of Congress from trading stocks, although it would allow them to keep existing stocks. It would not apply to the president. Why would the president want to be, it seems like the president also ought to be included in this. Anyway. All right. So because there's all sorts of insider information floating around, in Congress and also in the White House as well. So certainly, I can see why Congress is going to be limited in this way. Then they would say, well, what about the president? And I think it would make sense for the president to be included in that ban. Right? Nancy Pelosi, the most successful. She's more successful than Warren Buffett, in terms of her profits. She's may not be as rich as Warren Buffett, but maybe because of the scale. But she and her husband have been very, very successful. And there's even I think it's an app that allows people to monitor Nancy Pelosi's trades and then also trade in the same way that she does. Apparently it's pretty, I don't know, I haven't tried it. I got out of the market years ago. All right, let's see. All right, now let's go to I'm torn between North Korea and China. Let's go to North Korea. Okay. They had their party congress during the past week, and Kim Jong-un gave a speech, and apparently he threatens to completely destroy South Korea and offers dialogue to Washington without releasing the nuclear arsenal. Okay. So, completely destroy South Korea. The leader has called for the development of new intercontinental ballistic missiles and a larger arsenal of tactical nuclear weapons. For North Korean propaganda, the dear comrade Kim Jong-un is the best person in the world. This is how a flattering editorial in the Rodong Sinmun newspaper presented the dictator after being re-elected this week as the leader of the Workers' Party during a choreographed Congress held every 5 years. Under his leadership, North Korea has reached the highest level of absolute military strength, the editorial read. And I guess that is true, that North Korea is stronger militarily today than it has ever been before. Kim Jong-un has achieved unimaginable accomplishments that others would have taken centuries to achieve. In Pyongyang, hyperbole is not a rhetorical excess, it is a state doctrine. Well, may I say that it is not only in North Korea that we see hyperbole. We just read about how the United States is what? Stronger. No, bigger. What was it? Bigger, stronger, richer than ever before. Okay, so North Korea is not all that. Anyway, thousands of delegates from the party's elites have participated in a quinquennial liturgy. Okay, that's a good SAT word. Quinquennial liturgy designed to showcase unity and discipline. The political conclave in Pyongyang has further consolidated Kim's authoritarian figure and his control of power after 15 years at the helm of the isolated Asian regime. On Wednesday night, after the conclusion of the 9th Congress of the ruling party, a large military parade with over 14,000 troops took place in the capital. State media published photographs of the leader's daughter, teenager Ju-e. I guess we're still going with Ju-e, although in one document she was listed as Ju-he, accompanying Kim at the event amid speculation that she's being groomed as his successor. Okay, I've given my prognostication on that in previous broadcasts. Unlike other parades, this time there was no procession of intercontinental ballistic missiles or nuclear weapons. What did repeat were Kim's usual threats, warning of immediate retaliatory attacks against any threat to the country's sovereignty. And that's always there. Supreme Leader also pledged to build more nuclear weapons and enhance their missile programs again. In the speech broadcast by state media, however, an unexpected nod to the United States slipped in. Kim suggested that his country could get along with Washington as long as the Americans respect Pyongyang's status as a nuclear power. The nuance is crucial. North Korea does not negotiate denuclearization. It aspires to normalize its atomic status. And yeah, that has been a goal of Pyongyang now for a long time. And I think we've actually seen that both the United States and China are no longer emphasizing denuclearization to the extent that they were previously. China is no longer mentioning it, and I think also the U.S. is either not mentioning it at all now in their statements or has reduced the denuclearization emphasis a great deal during the Trump administration. So this is kind of a way of signaling that it's kind of a de facto recognition that North Korea is today a nuclear state. And I think Japan and South Korea, definitely South Korea and I think Japan as well, do not want to go in that direction, but I think the United States is probably dragging them in that direction. The comment comes at a time of speculation about a possible attempt to revive the personal diplomacy that in 2018 led Kim to shake hands with Donald Trump in Singapore. That thaw, which continued with a summit in Hanoi, evaporated without substantive agreements. Since then, North Korea has made progress in solid fuel military satellites and attack capabilities. There are now many rumors that Trump could attempt a meeting with Kim as he will travel to Asia for an official visit to China at the end of March. I thought it was April. Okay, I guess he's coming to Asia in March and then beginning of April going to China. I think that's how it's going to work. If the U.S. respects the current status of our country as stipulated in the Constitution, and it is, the North Korean Constitution states that North Korea is a nuclear possessing country and withdraws its hostile policy. And that, North Korea has always said that the United States has a hostile policy towards the North, but it is not really all that specific on what that means. I guess it means certainly the military exercises and the war games with South Korea. That obviously is what they mean. So this may be an indirect way of trying to get the United States to suspend or end war games, the exercises, the military exercises with South Korea and with Japan that are obviously sort of done targeting, I guess you can say, North Korea and China. Anyway, but we'll see how that works out. There's no reason why we cannot get along with the United States, said Kim, who in contrast closed the door to any ideas of building closer ties with South Korea, whom he described as his most hostile enemy. That's interesting because right now there's a leftist, even communist tending government in South Korea, and many of its members are what are called the Chusapa. Chusapa is the Pa is faction, so this is the Juche ideology faction of the Democrat Party in South Korea. And they are people who actually think that North Korea has got it right, that their governing ideology is the way to go for South Korea as well. So, but North Korea says, no, we don't recognize you. And I think they're doing it because they want to pressure South Korean government into not only stopping the military maneuvers or military exercises with the United States, but even to remove U.S. forces from the peninsula, to tell the U.S. to get out of the peninsula. We'll see how that works out. Okay. But yeah, so they're calling South Korea now its most hostile enemy. Furthermore, as highlighted by state media, Kim warned that his force could completely destroy the neighboring country if the North's security were threatened. And completely destroy is, again, hyperbole, but certainly they could kill hundreds of thousands, even millions of people if they decided to attack South with either their long-range artillery or with their chemical and biological weapons that we know that they have, and also the nuclear weapons as well. They could certainly do a whole lot of damage to South Korea and kill lots and lots and lots of people. The hardened rhetoric against Seoul is not new, but it is consistent with the regime's decision to blow up channels of cooperation. During the Congress held this week, North Korean leaders discussed and presented economic and military policies for the next decade, although few details of the agenda have been revealed. Opacity is the hallmark. North Korea continues to be burdened by international sanctions, border closures, chronic energy and food shortages. The official message insists on self-sufficiency, or in other words, juche. Right? Reality points to an increasing dependence on China, its commercial lifeline. Well, of course, they've increased their reliance on Russia in the last couple of years, and I think also that, as I mentioned, I think already earlier this week, North Korea is doing so well right now because of their trade with Russia. While they're trading human lives, quite frankly, human lives of their soldiers being sent to Ukraine in exchange for both fuel and technology, missile technology, and so forth, and other goods. The news that has emerged in recent days is that Kim Yo-jong, the powerful state sister of the president, has been promoted to head of the party's propaganda department. Previously, she was deputy director, considering her role as the guardian of the narrative and political operator overseeing relations between the two Koreas. In a system where family loyalty is a guarantee of survival, her promotion strengthens the dynasty. Well, well, tell that to Chang Song-taek, right? Well, Chang Song-taek was the uncle, or actually, the husband of the aunt of Kim Jong-un, who was pulled out of a party event in front of thousands of people and then taken away and executed in a very gruesome manner. And also, half-brother Kim Jong-nam was basically executed in public in the Kuala Lumpur airport passenger terminal. So family can actually be dangerous. So, but I think when push comes to shove, once Kim Jong-un passes from the scene, then the little sister is going to be in a position to consolidate power quickly. I expect, this is my amateur perspective, but and I think she's going to get rid of the dear beloved daughter very quickly. And as I've said before, the nice thing about North Korea is that I can say anything about North Korea and no one can disprove me. So that's what I'm saying. All right. So we'll see whether I'm right or not. Okay. But and Kim Jong-un, being obese, could go, I suppose, pretty much at any time. Although he's in his, what is it now? He's about 43-ish, give or take, a couple of years. I think we're not exactly sure of his age, but give or take 1 or 2 years, it was 43. So we will see. You've heard the joke, haven't you, that there are all these North Korean cyber workers, coders, managing to smuggle themselves into American tech companies. And tech companies have been trying to figure out how to ferret these people out. And one person suggested an easy way is to simply, during the interview process, ask the person, how fat is Kim Jong-un? That would be an easy way to distinguish the North Korean spies. Anyway, we'll see. Okay. All right, enough of that. Enough of that. Okay. Let's see now. I have this story on China, but let's go to Japan instead. Okay. This is an Epoch Times story on Takaichi, Prime Minister Takaichi. Japan Prime Minister not afraid to take on Beijing, it says. Okay. Buoyed by recent electoral wins, Takaichi is moving the country to a defensive posture against China. This is a news and analysis on Epoch Times. Yeah, let's do this one instead of China. Yeah. It's about China, but from a Japanese perspective. Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi emerged from a snap election on February 8th with a mandate, rare in post-war politics, a two-thirds supermajority in the more powerful lower house. The result capped a 3-month period of strained Japan-China relations over Taiwan, and Japan's assertion that it had a right to respond if a conflict threatened its survival. During a November 7, 2025 lower house session, Takaichi said that a crisis involving Taiwan, such as Chinese armed actions, including the deployment of warships, could constitute a survival-threatening situation for Japan, potentially justifying a military response. Beijing then took a series of aggressive steps. It urged Chinese citizens to avoid traveling to Japan because of heightened tensions, and suspended Japanese seafood imports while cutting inadequate water checks, while citing inadequate water checks. But remember, recently a Chinese fishing boat was caught fishing in Japanese waters, even though they suspended Japanese seafood imports, saying, oh, the water may be contaminated around Japan. But then they sent their fishing boat into Japanese waters, and the boat got arrested by the Japanese Coast Guard. A Chinese diplomat even posted a threat online to cut off Takaichi's neck over her Taiwan stance. And I think that was the Consul General for Osaka who did that. So it was not the ambassador, but it was a pretty highly placed diplomat though. Beijing's response was widely read in Tokyo as an attempt to intimidate and isolate Japan's new leader. Instead, it helped turn the February 8th election into a referendum on national security. Yes. So China actually shot themselves in the foot. The ruling Liberal Democratic Party won 316 of the 465-member chamber, and coalition partner the Japan Innovation Party added 36 for a total of 352. That gives Takaichi a degree of parliamentary control that can override the upper house in most cases and expedite major security legislation and budget changes. Analysts had told the Epoch Times that the victory gives Takaichi political cover to accelerate changes already underway: higher defense spending, longer range weapons, tighter counterintelligence, and deeper U.S. operational integration. Those moves could reshape the Indo-Pacific security landscape, they said. Yeah, for the first time, Japan is creating the equivalent of the Central Intelligence Agency, which they have not had all these years. More than 80 years after 1945, they have not had this intelligence agency, although they have some of the best intelligence in the world, and I've already talked about how that is possible. In Beijing's worst-case reading, they said it could also reopen politically sensitive debates over Japan's nuclear posture and possible nuclear sharing arrangements with the United States, even if actual deployment remains distant. It's long been said that Japan is sort of on a holding pattern in terms of producing its own nuclear weapons. They could probably produce their own nuclear weapons within 6 months if someone gives the green light. And they're just sort of holding at that point where if someone says go, they can do it in 6 months. Cold War-like dynamic. After the victory, Takaichi struck a familiar tone, saying her government would pursue a constructive and stable relationship with China and remain open to dialogue. Akio Yaita, a veteran Japanese journalist and director of the Indo-Pacific Strategy think tank, said he expects that Japan-China relations may, quote, settle into a long-term Cold War-like state, unquote, of persistent distrust and strategic competition, but they are unlikely to deteriorate further. In fact, I think both sides, especially China, will look for a way to step back gracefully, he said. Yes, China, fought 2 wars against Japan during the last 30, 40 years, and they're not interested in fighting another. That is for sure. 2 wars, yeah. One near-term stabilizer, he suggested, could be U.S. President Donald Trump's plan to visit China in April. If Washington and Beijing want calmer optics ahead of that meeting, Beijing may have less incentive to escalate against Tokyo in the short run. Li Shihu, an international affairs professor at Taiwan's National Chengchi University and director of its Japan Studies graduate program, said Beijing is also dealing with a structural problem inside the Japanese politics. Political party Komeito, the Liberal Democratic Party's longtime junior coalition partner that often acted as a moderating force, left the coalition in October 2025. Well, Lee told the Epoch Times that Beijing had used Komeito, yes, as a political back channel, yes, to communicate and at times restrain a Liberal Democratic Party-led government, yes. So, yeah, for, 26 years, the Komeito was allied with the LDP, and the LDP relied on the Komeito to deliver enough seats to have a majority. But then when Takaichi became prime minister, Komeito said, hey, we cannot work with this woman. She's too far to the right, and so we're going to leave, and we're also taking all our seats with us, and good luck. And so it was kind of a crisis for Takaichi. But she overcame that crisis and actually increased her seats, and now the Komeito has lost its influence almost completely within the lower house. They would have been better off sticking with her if she, and I think she actually was open to that. Anyway, let's not get into that right now. With Komeito gone and the coalition now anchored by a more defense-forward partner, the Japan Innovation Party, Beijing has fewer familiar handles inside Japanese politics, Lee said. Yes, great, fantastic. The consequence is not that Tokyo will become reckless, he said, but that it can move faster on policies Beijing dislikes, even if constitutional revision still faces hurdles in the upper house. Yes, and it's not going to happen anytime soon. As I've discussed before, they're not in a position to be revising the Constitution right now, although they can, if they want, they can start the process now, but it'll be years and years and years before there's any change to the Constitution. The biggest shift may be speed, not direction, according to Su Tzu-Yun, director of Taiwan's Institute for National Defense and Security Research. Japan's defense policy, he told the Epoch Times, has already been shifting from an exclusively defense-oriented posture toward what he called proactive defense, buying longer-range missiles, developing counter-strike capabilities, and integrating more tightly with the United States and other partners. All this with, what they call a peace constitution, Article 9, that says we will not use war as a means of settling international issues. Yes. Much of that does not require rewriting Japan's constitution, he said. It can be done through budgets, procurement decisions, operational planning, and updated interpretations of existing authorities. This is it. The interpretations of the Constitution. This is why I say, in any country, right? The Constitution says what? Constitution says whatever the Supreme Court says it says. That's how the American Supreme Court could allow abortion in 1973, then changed its mind in 2023, even though there's nothing in the Constitution about abortion. Of course, income tax is another Another example of that as well. All right, that's all for today. Excuse me. So I'll be back tomorrow. Hope. Please pray for our tech team. Hope they can be with me as well. That's always helpful. God bless, Godspeed. May His kingdom come quickly. And so now I will stop the streaming.